with the words of Shalom Aleichem on page 6, please. That was like last week. We did have a wonderful program here, though, this past week. A woman who's Ojibwe came and sang music of Native American peoples, reminded us that we are on very holy land right here, the land of the Osage, most likely. And she brought the story of the missing indigenous children to this space, and I just heard it, but I can also still feel the sounds of the indigenous music and the story that she brought about these children who continue to go missing because we human beings haven't figured out a way to recognize that every life matters, every life is sacred, every child, the whole world. And so, the story about the angels is that when we were crossing the sea and we were singing, and the angels began to sing with us, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy Presence, godliness, said, "Stop singing. The angels don't get to sing," God said, "until all people are free." And the Egyptians and their horses were drowning in the sea. And somebody had to care about them. So the angels will sing with us when there is no cost to freedom. So let's welcome the angels. Ask them to sing with us tonight on page 6.
Shalom Aleichem. Malachi Hashari. Malachi Elyon, Malachi Harachamim. Mi melech Malachi HaMalachim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Malachi HaRachamim. Mi melech Malachi HaMalachim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachuni l'shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Malachi HaRachamim. Mi melech Malachi HaMalachim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitechem l'shalom,
Jean, you're at the end of the road. You want to come and light the candles? Yeah, great. With help. Representing the whole road. Yeah, the road's growing. Oh, this is definitely a Larry thing. Right down. Just light them and we'll all sing together. We'll take some light. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom. So now let's welcome that extra soul. Now that we have the light. Someone's singing a Spanish love song. I think that's for you, Anna.
Apesar de las hierbas y atarme de las en él me arrimo yo. En él afiguro yo, en él todo el mundo.
I think it was just last week, we had a bar mitzvah of a young man whose mother and father, one came from Belgium, the other from Hungary, and the grandparents actually came from Belgium and Hungary, but the family came from Japan and Switzerland and Israel and Hungary and Belgium. I think there were like 12 different countries that this family came all over the world right here. And it reminded us that we are a dispersed people even now. You know, and I said to the young man when I passed him the Torah that he could go anywhere in the world and find family, and he literally could. But what I meant was the toolbox that we gave him of being able to pray in this language, in Hebrew, allowed him to be able to go anywhere and enter into a synagogue and find a home. And I know I've done that myself throughout the world, you know. I found myself in Tunisia, having to hide my Jewish identity, and I ended up praying with the Jews of Tunis, Hong Kong, all kinds of India. Of course, Jimmy led prayers. Every time we entered into a space, a synagogue that was no longer in use, Jim brought life back to that synagogue and prayed. And we prayed ancient prayers that we knew had been prayed there for so long. But the one thing I also learned from this young man, was given the talit of his great-grandfather, who was actually taken to camps from his village in Hungary, and went back to that same town after the Shoah, after he was liberated, and dared to pray in the synagogue in his town. After what had happened to him, after what his neighbors had allowed to happen to the Jewish community, he put on that talit and he went to the synagogue and he prayed. And what I said to that young man, because it felt so right, was that was one of the greatest acts of resistance. And so tonight, we have to remember that prayer, in the face of everything that disappoints us, prayer in the face of everything that seems so broken, our showing up and daring to pray these prayers is a great act of resistance as well. So we awaken that extra soul with the hymn on, right, page 7.
יום זה לישראל, אורה בשמחה, אורה בשמחה, אורה בשמחה, שבת מנוחה, אורה בשמחה, אורה בשמחה, שבת ציווית הפיקודים במעמד סיני.
You've commanded us, standing assembled at Sinai,
שבת ומועדים לשמור בכל שנה,
to keep your Sabbath, to guard your Sabbath all the year,
לערוך לפניי,
to set out a table
מעשה דברך,
laden with everything that would satisfy us,
שבת מנוחה,
so that we can truly have a Shabbat Menucha, a Sabbath of true rest, renewal.
יום זה לישראל, אורה בשמחה, אורה בשמחה, אורה בשמחה, שבת מנוחה, אורה בשמחה, אורה בשמחה, שבת חמדת לבבות למה שבורה,
Treasure of heart for the broken people,
לנפשות נכבות נשמה יתרה,
I give you the gift of an additional soul for your souls
מנפש
to rest,
מצרה,
soother of sighs,
יסיר הנחה,
for the prisoned spirit.
שבת מנוחה.
A Shabbat Menucha.
זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, שבת קידשת ברכת אותו מכל ימים.
When the work of creating the world was done, you chose this day to be holy and blessed.
ששת כילית מלאכת עולמי.
Do you need more?
בו מצאו הגומי. There's lots more verses, I think.
Yeah.
השקט וביטחון, quiet and dependable. שבת
still.
מנוחה. יום זה לישראל, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה, אורה ושמחה, אורה ושמחה, שבת מנוחה.
Let this be Israel's day of light and simcha, joy. Shabbat Menucha, let it be a Sabbath that renews us, gives us real rest, that we can renew our souls. Page 8. Still in this preparation for prayer, now Lecha Dodi, we call to our beloveds. We call to that which makes us whole. Page 8.
חדותי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. וחדותי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, שמו לתפארת ולתחילה. חדותי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. וחדותי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה ומחשבה תחילה. חדותי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. וחדותי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי כי ואורך קומי אורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נברא. וחדותי לקראת לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצות חולה, טוב אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
For Abel, we invite you to stay standing so we can call each other to prayer with the words of the Baruch Hu on page 11.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Amorah.
Page 15. Page 15. You can be seated if you like. You can stay standing if you like, however you're most comfortable, to enter into the peace of this prayer. It promises us that if we do the most important thing, to shema, to listen, we will know how to respond, to give that tshuva, that response in the holiest of ways.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Please be seated as we continue on page 16. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושופך בקומך וקשרתם לעוד על ידיך והיו לתותפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם Asher hotzeiti echem me'eretz Mitzrayim, Lihiot lachem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. Emet, page 18. Our freedom song, our protest song, our reminder that resistance comes in many forms.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נוראתי לא תוסף אלה, מלאכותיך ובניך, בוקיים לפני משה, זלי זלי זלי, זלי זלי זלי, זלי יענו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. ואוהב ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו. As you redeemed Jacob and saved him from arms that were stronger than his own, so you may redeem all who are oppressed and persecuted. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Then Miriam, Haniviyah, the prophetess, she took a drum in her hand and we all followed her with drums and dancing. And Miriam chanted with us. Shiru le'Adonai ki ga'oka, Shiru le'Adonai ki ga'oka, Shiru le'Adonai ki ga'oka, Shiru le'Adonai ki ga'oka. Sus v'rochvo rama vayam, Sus v'rochvo rama vayam, Shiru le'Adonai
That's when the
ki ga'oka,
horses and their riders
Shiru
went into the sea. Page 20.
Fros aleinu sukat shelumecha, Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Baruch atah Adonai Habores Sukkot Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Amo Yisrael V'al Yerushalayim. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Over us. Over all people. And over Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. We are praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Page 21, please. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש שבת וינפש. The children of Israel shall keep the Shabbos, observing it as a sign forever. It is the sign between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Eternal One made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day God rested. Vayinafash, God breathed the soul into creation. Vayinafash, God breathed the soul into creation. Vayinafash, Vayinafash, Vayinafash.
If you're able, we invite you to rise as we begin the tefillah together. In the evening service, we use the tefillah as an opportunity to go within. The prayers that are here are the prayers we find in our own hearts. But first, we pray that our lips and our mouths be open to truth, be open to praise, be open to gratitude, be open to prayer.
Adonai Sifatai Tiftach, Tiftach. Oh God, open up my lips, that my mouth might speak a little poetry. Adonai Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, so that I might speak a little poetry. page 29, please. Atov, the one who does good. Don't take away your rachmanas. You're giving, you're loving. V'hamerachem, the pure giving of it. Kilo tamu chasadecha, your graces, your givingness, your overflow should never end. Me'olam, forever. Kivinu lach, we have depended upon you. Atov kilo chalu, racha racha mecha. Atu kilo chalu, racha racha mecha, ve'amirachem, Kilo tamu chasadecha, me'olam kivinu lach. Me'olam kivinu lach. Me'olam kivinu lach. We have always put our trust in you. Come close, boys and girls. I want to tell you a story. This coming week is given over to one of our great heroes in our tradition. He gets really one day a year, but he's the boss hoss with the soul sauce. His name is Bar Yochai. He lived in the 2nd century, and he is the paradigm for all of the great mystical teachers of our tradition, Bar Yochai. And his holiday is Lag BaOmer. The 33rd day of the counting of the Omer is his holiday. And on that day, we celebrate Bar Yochai. There's a lot to say about Bar Yochai. He was a really interesting, large personage in our tradition. And many of the teachers that came after him would cite Bar Yochai communicating through them, you know, they would cite Bar Yochai. I am Bar Yochai, I am Bar Yochai, I am Bar Yochai. All really great, great teachers like Lutzato, like the Baal Shem Tov, like the Holy Ari in the 16th century, like the Baal Shem Tov in the 18th century. I am Bar Yochai, I am Bar Yochai. He's the paradigm. The classic text of Jewish mysticism is written around his character, teaching to his group that they call the Chevraya, the sacred friends. There's 10 of them. So I want to tell you a story about a guy who wrote a story about Bar Yochai. Because about Bar Yochai, you can Google. But about this guy, hardly anybody knows about him. So I always like to remember this guy. Not that I don't think about Bar Yochai at this time of year, I do. But I'll be teaching about Bar Yochai next week a lot. And I might not mention this guy. His name was Ibn Lavi, the son of Lavi. And he lived in Spain around the turn, bless you, around the turn of the 16th century. He was related to one of the great teachers in Baghdad, Sajja, I think it was. So it came a time in his life where he wanted to connect with his ancestral roots in Baghdad. So he was going to travel through North Africa. And not an easy trip around the turn of 1500. It was about Shimon ibn Lavi. Now the reason I cite him is because we have a poem that he wrote about Bar Yochai that's very sacred, very holy. And in most communities, it's only sung on special occasions, around now. It has 10 verses, and each verse is given to one of the energies called sfirot, Kabbalistic energies, that are located in the body, and they're located in the cosmos, they're located within godliness, as if you could say, and they're also located in the person, like chakras, things like that. And there's 10 of them, generally. And each one of these verses has implications for one of the energies. And the song is about Bar Yochai. It's a very holy song. I'll sing one version, just the chorus. Bar Yochai nimshach ashrecha shemen sason mechaverecha. That's the chorus. It's Bar Yochai, Bar Yochai, Bar Yochai. You are anointed with joy, with joyousness, with the oil of joy from your friends, these chevraya, from these 10 friends. They anoint you with joy. And that appears between every verse. So there's many melodies for this song. That's one of my favorite ones, North African, where he spent a lot of time. So we don't know too much about Ibn Lavi. We know that he wrote some commentary on the Zohar, the classic text of Jewish mysticism, but it's lost. We know the name of it, etc., but we don't have the text. But we have this song, and we have it in his name, about Bar Yochai. And we don't know much about him, but we do know this story. So when he went to find his ancestral root in Baghdad, he leaves Spain, comes to North Africa, and he finds a caravan that's traveling across North Africa, the deserts of North Africa. And he says, I need to traverse North Africa. I'm going to Baghdad. And the caravan driver says, the caravan organizer says, sure, come, glad to take it. He says, I have one thing though, I don't travel on Shabbat, you know. So on Shabbat I'll have to stop, and caravan driver says, no problem, we'll stop, no problem. You know, it's like the guy that comes and works on your stuff, no problem. He says, yeah, no problem. So he joins up the caravan, they travel across North Africa. It's not a simple trip, there's lots of danger. So they come to one of the desert locations as as the sun begins to make its way home in the west, as we say, on Erev Shabbos, right now, about this time. And he says to the caravan driver, well, I'll have to wait. I have to wait here till after Shabbat. I can't travel on Shabbat. Caravan driver says, well, I can't hold up the whole caravan. You know, we have to go on. So he says, okay, you go ahead, but I stay here. So the caravan goes on. He stays there. So he has food he had packed up for himself. You know, he brought his kosher food with him. So it's just about this time. He's making the prayers, these prayers that we're making tonight. And he's about to make the prayers, and a mountain lion appears, comes through the desert, mountain lion, stares. You know how they stare at you? Have you ever been around one? They stare at you. Before they eat you, they stare at you. They have a remarkable concentration. They're thinking, this is going to be delicious. But they stare at you. So the animal stares at him. He stares at the animal. He says, what are you going to do? You know, so he takes out his prayer book. He makes the prayers, these prayers. The animals sit, you know how they, you know, the way they stands, the animal sits there on his haunches like that, you know, staring at him. He makes the prayers. He takes out, he has some food wrapped up, unwraps the food, eats some of it, throws some to the animal. The animal eats some. Gets dark, goes to sleep. The animal goes to sleep. Wakes up the next day. The animal wakes. He makes the morning prayers. The animal stares at him. He unwraps some food. He has something to eat. Throws some to the animal. The animal has something to eat. Spend the whole Shabbos sitting there, you know, waiting for evening. You have to have 3 meals on the Sabbath. So on the 3rd meal, just before Shabbos is out, makes the prayers, unwraps some food, has something to eat, throws some to the animal. The animal eats it. It's time for him to move on. He climbs onto the animal's back, and the animal carries him across the desert the rest of the way. They come to Tripoli, ancient city, Tripoli, in what today's Libya, you know. We call it Louvre. He comes to Tripoli, and the caravan is in Tripoli, and they see him coming on the back of this animal, and they think he's a miracle worker, you know. So the animal disappears into the desert, and he expects to rejoin the caravan, but when he gets to Tripoli, he finds out that all Torah knowledge had disappeared from Tripoli, had left Tripoli. There was no one to teach anymore. So he thinks, maybe I'm supposed to stay here. So he stays in Tripoli, and he returns Torah knowledge to the desert there in Tripoli, single-handedly. And that's about all we know about Ibn Lavi. He never goes any further than that. Only one other detail. We know that he met a woman, and he married, and he had a son. He wrote poetry about his son. His son was silent. And he wrote poetry about, you know what a wadi is? A wadi in a desert, it's what is it? Yes, a dry riverbed. So it only fills up when the rains come, otherwise it's dry. But it fills up with the rains. It's like what they have of a season. It's instead of a season. The wadi fills and dries, fills and dries. So he wrote poetry about he and his silent son sitting by the wadi year after year, watching the river rise, the river dry, the river rise, and the river dry. And that's all we know about Ibn Lavi, the story of he and his silent son, and the poem about Bar Yochai that's given in his name. You like that story?
Yeah. I tell that story to your grandchildren every time they sleep over. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
Bar
It's a good
Yochai.
story. Yeah. They love. It's their favorite story.
Pardon?
They love that story. It's their
Do they?
favorite story. I mean, I change it a little bit to make it a little more fun for them, but it's basically the same story. They call it the Sabbath Lion.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Love that story.
Bar Yochai nimshafta ashrecha
So he gave us
shemen sahason mecha verecha.
he gave us a way to remember Bar Yochai, who also is, of course, you can, as Jimmy said, we could all Google Bar Yochai because there are many, many stories about, and many teachings from Bar Yochai, and especially now at this cycle of our holy days, this time between Passover and Shavuot, when it is a semi-mourning period. It's a strange period, and I think with the full moon and the eclipse and just moving through, you know, it's a time you're not supposed to get married, it's a time you're not supposed to cut your hair, right? It's a time it's a kind of a mini mourning period. But on this 33rd day, today's the 30th day, on the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, Lag BaOmer, this day that's given over to Bar Yochai, it's said that Bar Yochai stopped a plague, that there was a terrible plague that was really causing tremendous amount of suffering and keeping people apart. And on Lag BaOmer, the plague stopped. And probably the notion of the bonfires came from burning all that schmutz that came with the plague. And to this day, people celebrate, they get married, they cut their children's hair for the first time, they do all kinds of things that are resistance to mourning.
They visit his grave.
And they visit his grave, which
Meron.
in Meron, in the north of Israel, which was the very first place that I ever dug as an archaeologist, was at Meron.
You can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, and there's
Live.
hundreds and hundreds of people go, and they light fires, and
Sing.
they sing and they pray. But on the side of the mountain where we thought were tombs, we started digging. And the yeshiva guys came out. They were furious. How dare you dig in tombs? Well, we had all the right permits and everything else, and because we were archaeologists, you know, and they were furious, and they protested and everything else. But we dug, and it turned out where we were digging, right on the side, right under the grave of Bar Yochai, it wasn't a tomb at all. It was a mikvah. And as we got deeper and deeper into this space on the side of the mountain, we could see the plaster, and it even had ancient kind of paintings that were in the mikveh from the 2nd century. And so I got to be the first woman in that mikveh in 2,000 years. That's what the Israeli news said. But the end of the story is that when we figured out that it was an ancient mikveh that was probably used, by the rebbes that these guys were studying, they came and we all made Al Chaim together. We all celebrated together for a moment. People from so many different worlds came together, brought together by Bar Yochai, and the sacredness of that place, and the ritual that was shared by many people up until that very day.
I'll tell you another story.
Uh-oh.
You ready?
Yeah.
One time I was in Sfat,
Oh.
which is,
You can walk there from Meron if you have to.
I had to walk there once because I missed my bus.
I had to walk there because I missed my bus. Sometimes he does that.
So I was
You stayed in the hotel. I had to walk.
No, it was the other way around. So I was in Sfat and I was supposed to teach about Bar Yochai. That was my job. We were taking a group around.
Right.
So you can see Meron from Sfat's built on a mountain.
Yeah.
And from certain side of the mountainside, you can see Meron where he's buried from Sfat. It's 5 kilometers, I think.
Yeah, probably about that.
So we were in the courtyard in the middle of town, and we were visiting synagogues and stuff, and we didn't know, we hadn't been there in a long time, so we didn't know anybody or anything. But I was supposed to teach about Bar Yochai. That was my job. So I wandered away, and there was a lot of action in this one synagogue. So I couldn't quite see inside because the window was a little high, so I took a garbage can that was there, and I stood on top of the garbage can just so I could see what was going on inside that place, because there was something happening inside that place. And I looked into the window. The window was just cracked. It wasn't a big window. I looked into the window, and I'm looking at leg level, people's legs. And people are praying and carrying on. And I'm looking, I'm staring, I'm looking, I'm taking it all in. And my eyes fix on a person on the other side of the room wearing a shtreimel, the shtreimel? Flat hat, Hasidic hat, the flat hat, long beard, shtreimel. And he's sitting on a bench, and he looks like he's looking at me, and he's going like this, like this. And I couldn't believe he actually sees me, because it was unlikely. It was a small window, there's a lot of legs between me and him. And it looks like he's talking to me. He's going like this. So I go into the room. I walk up the stairs and I go into the room, and I had this experience walking through the room where people kept saying hello to me, like they knew me. And I looked at people, and at least 10 people looked familiar to me, like I knew them. And the room parted for me. And I walked through the room to this guy, shtreimel, beard, and he's sitting on this bench, he's going like this, and he was talking to me. He sits me down, and he starts speaking to me in French. So I know a little French, so I spoke back into him French, and then he takes me over to the window behind him, and he points out the window, and he goes like this, and he says, Bar Yochai. He's pointing to Meron. He says, Bar Yochai. He tells me, Bar Yochai is buried there. And he's pointing me to Meron. So I spent the rest of the evening talking to him. Then he invited me back the next day. I came the next day, told stories. Then years later, I told my son about this. My son was in Sfat years later. I told him about this guy. And I don't even remember if I mentioned the guy's name to my son. My son comes home with his art. He's an artist. a painter. My son came home with his art, wrapped up in a tube. I said, where'd you get this? He said, from this guy, he knows you. I said, how'd you meet this guy? He says, yeah, I met him in Sfat, but he knows you. Well, I said, I get, yeah. Then, more years later, we're in Sfat again. I'm walking around, and when somebody passes away in Israel, they put these notices on the wall. And I look at the wall, and there's his name. He had just passed away, like less than 30 days before, because the notice was still up. And when I came back, I was thinking about him. And somebody called me when I came back here and said, I bring you greetings from this guy's wife. His wife? I hadn't met his wife, I never thought. And he said to me, yeah, his wife wanted to be remembered to you because you taught her when you first came to St. Louis. She was in a conversion class I taught.
Crazy.
When we came here in the early 80s. It was either between 81 and 84. And she had converted and moved to Israel.
Wow.
And she married him. Now, what do you make of that story? How many chapters is that story? It's at least 4 chapters of that story.
Yeah. So just when you think the story's over, it opens up again. And I think that kind of brings us back to the cycle of the holy days. We do the same holidays every year. It's the same cycle. But every year, there's something a little bit new, something a little bit different that happens. Maybe just because we're different. It gives us a chance to think, where were we? Where are we? And what's yet to come? Thanks for the story, Jimmy. True story, I was there, but I was the one that had to walk. Right. Bar Yochai. So I hope you feel, as we're passing through this time of the Omer, that we are really nearing the climax of our story, that night of Shavuot, when the heavens open to our prayers. And so that's the night that we don't necessarily pray. It's the night that we study, because that's the essence. That's who we are. We really are a people of learning. Our learning leads us to everything else that we're meant to do. So we offer a Mishaberach, a healing prayer, for all of those that we know are working so hard to heal. I hold Melissa and Matt in my heart, in our hearts for sure. We pray that they heal, and everything good that can happen for them will happen. And for your family, lots of healing. We have lots of people on our list: Meredith Berkowitz and Debbie Gordon and Martin Fay and Ellen Holtzman Langston and Eileen Ehrlich and Eleanor Levy and Joan Butcher and Sherry Kroner and Debbie Zorensky. Mary Holtz, Randy Fleischer's mom, Linda Randall. Special shout out to Randy and his family and his mother, who's very strong. Amy Schumacher and Sandy Loyman and Norma Sherman and Joel Achtenberg and Jordan Cronemer, Rachel Neubauer Bogart, David Schlesinger, Andrew Shepard, Florence Honigman, Rabbi Bert Jacobson, Rena Bat Ruth, and Mary Chris Prost. I don't know if you see any other names.
Yes, Michael.
Michael, do you have names for us from the chat, from the people streaming?
I don't see any names.
Aha, you do. Thank you, Michael. This is Michael, everyone. Thank you, Michael. For Lisa Howard and Anthony Howard, for Maggie, and for Ellen. Anybody here want to shout out a name? Yeah. For your mom. Thanks. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. For Peter. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. We can do a little self-heal too. Take a little healing for ourselves. We could all use it. And once again, we call upon those angels to make the heavens and the earth a little bit closer, so whatever healing can happen, that we kind of connect those worlds. I mean, I think there were crazy connection of past and present and future and upper and lower and all kinds of worlds that make these kinds of stories happen, and maybe they can also help us bring healing to the sick.
Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, for the healing of the spirit, the healing of the body, for those we know, for those we don't know, for those we know, for those we don't know. On my right, the angel Michael, on my left, the angel Gabriel. In front of me, the angel Uriel, 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 Uriel behind me. The angel Raphael, and above my head, above my head, above my head, above my head, Shekhinah Tehil. Baruch atah Adonai Rofei HaCholim. Blessed are you, great healer. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Jimmy. There is a music jam and Havdalah tomorrow night from 5 to 7:30, right here, in person only, with Rabbi Daniel and a host of musical CRC folks for a musical jam and Havdalah tomorrow night. And then there is hopefully a Lag BaOmer campfire, if the weather permits, Monday night at 8 in the CRC green space, also in person only, with a campfire, and Rabbi Randy, who says, bring your own chairs or blankets on the ground. And then next Friday night is the confirmation service. Always a treat to hear our 10th graders talk about their journey, not just through confirmation year, but really their journey through their years here at CRC. And I've been told, I had a text this week that Mayor Tashara Jones would like to come to that service as well, so she'll probably be here next Friday night as well. If she didn't get too busy with everything else going on, yeah.
And on Sunday, we'll be working in the garden.
Thank you, great.
5 to 7.
5 to 7 in the garden.
Planting
Cucumbers, peppers, turnips,
and doing some harvesting. The collards have grown so well, we're actually
harvesting collards. And after a year of Shemitah, after a year of letting the land be fallow, we're expecting a huge, wonderful crop, so we're going to need extra gardeners this year at the CRC farm. Everybody's welcome. It's always a lot of fun. There's music, there's all kinds of fun things. So this Sunday, from 5 to 7. So lots of wonderful opportunities to kind of move through this Omer period. Lots of learning going on, and I don't know, lots of good things coming up. So was one other thing I forgot. I don't remember.
Chickens?
Huh?
Chickens?
Chickens?
No?
No. No, but I will say, I hadn't thought about this in so long, but when I had missed the bus and I had to walk from Svat to Meron, it was like midnight. It was between the suns. It wasn't yesterday and it wasn't yet tomorrow. It was that in-between time. And I got really thirsty halfway there, and there was a spring that I had never seen before, and I had been there a lot. There was this spring, and I did feel, and then I noticed across from the spring, there was another, kind of tomb. You could tell that it was a tomb. It had this rounded place over it of a holy person. And I really, it was a dangerous walk that somebody let me do in the middle of the night by myself. But I never was scared. And I remember feeling that I was being accompanied on that walk.
That was Miriam's well.
It must have been Miriam's well. It was a beautiful well, and I remember the taste of that water. It was so fresh and so beautiful. So, I don't think just magical things happen there. I think magical things happen here when we're opened to them. And God knows we need them. God knows we need them. So we turn to all the people who have gone from this world to the next. I know our friend Carl is here because he is in mourning for his dear Sue. And it's really an honor to have you here, Carl. Thank you. Remembering Sue. So if you have a yard site, or if you're in your year of mourning and you're comfortable standing, I invite you to stand first so we can hear the names of the people that you have come to remember. I can't believe it's 2 years. Oh my God, is it 3 years? 3 years? Oh my gosh. He's so here. Talk about a holy presence. That Gil is here making us smile, isn't he? He really is. Yeah. 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 Thank you. The room is full. The room, it's so funny. I took a walk to the cemetery, to where Adina is at the cemetery with my granddaughter this morning and my daughter, and that's just what she said. I said, I hope Bina feels Adina's presence here. She said, Mom, how's she going to tell? It's so crowded. There's just so many. That's just what she said. I think the room is full. Thank you for that. And say a word about Gil. 3 years, hard to believe.
No, I think it was because of Bill that I came to see Christine.
We thank him.
For him, Judaism was a very central part of his identity. And he brought it here,
We thank him for bringing you. And I met him across the street. He was at the church, at the Unitarian Church. He was their resident Jew. And I met him because they invited me to do a Seder at the church. And in those days, I would do anything. I did that. But who was leading the Seder? It was Gil. They didn't need me. He knew as much as anybody. And that's how we met and kind of fell in love. Yeah.
would tell this story often. He
Yeah.
said to me, how come you know Hebrew so much better than a lot of people in my congregation? I grew up in the Bronx.
Oh my gosh. He couldn't have been more generous and kind and sweet and smart and funny and everything. So to have his presence here tonight is really a gift. May his memory continue to be a blessing. We'll say Kaddish for him tonight together. Steve?
I'm getting ready to celebrate my 72nd year in the Clayton community.
Wow.
So this past week we had the passing of Sue Barat. And then one member of the Funk family. We all grew up in, her children and really a very tight Jewish holidays and things happen. The gate school it was empty. Anyway, she turned 100 years old in February. She was still pretty much independent.
Wow.
She passed. I got to see her three sons this past week. Seeing one's in Denver, one's in California, and two in California. Anyway, that's for super odd. And then additionally, one of my ministry peers, Mike Siegel, just passed away. This came along on Monday. Mike Siegel.
Thank you. May their memories be a blessing. And Carl.
Sue died. My wife Sue was a school teacher, and then became a social worker, therapist, and she always knew how people felt.
She did.
That's probably what made her a great therapist, and what made the 26 years we were together also great. And she did beautiful art.
She did. She was a wonderful artist. And you know what else I want to say about her that I learned? How beloved a beloved mother and grandmother. You know? A wonderful grandma, yeah. I listened to her grandchildren.
She had 5 great grandchildren.
Yeah. And a great partner to you. Thank you. I love that you brought her here. I love that you brought her here too. Thank you. She often came with you. Yes. Yes. No, beautiful. Anyone else have a name? Oh, Michael, you have some names for us? Thank you, dear. Edna Dell Wynell, Goldie Levine, Bessie Yakowitz, Steve and Jerry's grandma, and Jeff McIlvoy. McIlvoy. Well, that's somebody you know?
Lois Lumstein.
And Lois Lumstein, of course. Okay. And can stand as with our mourners to let them know they do not stand alone, as we also remember my brother-in-law today, Harold Hudspeth, and Anne Spiegelglass, and Shirley Sewell, and let's see, of course, Gil right here, and Saul Dubinsky, and Betty Renee Marver, Sylvia Ginsparg, Alice Handelman, David Kaskowitz, Larry Mange, Bert Garland, Sidney Wolfe, Bear Robinson, Paul Schumer, Daniel Williams, Patty Twellman, and Bruce Schneider, Stuart Milner, Varda Vainberg, Nikki Nymark, Lois Chait, David Edelstein, Bert Newman, Gloria Sirkin, Maurice Guller, Kathy Lass, Lois Lumstein, we said, Jay Summer, Ben Neiman, Paul Michel, Harry Prince, Gary Weil, George Spooner, Leah Larson, Dr. Moisey Shopper, Sue Smith, of course, and most recently Marjorie Shepherd. For all the people that we've named, for all the people that we hold in our hearts, the words of the Kaddish are also resistance for us. If in the face of death we can say to ourselves to keep living and learning and loving, this too is resistance. And so we say together, Yit Kadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Ve'alma zivrach yirute ve'amlich malchute. V'chayachon u'vyomechon u'v'chayedachol be'Yisrael. V'agalav v'zman kariv ve'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalei v'yitalal. Shmei dekudasha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Useh shalom b'mirmav u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen.
Ve'imru, 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 amen. Ve'imru, 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 amen. Ve'imru, 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 amen.
Ve'imru, 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 Thanks for showing up tonight. Thanks to all the people who are streaming. And we're going to go out and have an oneg together and make the blessings over the wine and the bread. Because every time we make a blessing, it takes what is ordinary and raises it, brings it to just a little bit higher state of holiness. It's all we got, we human beings, to take what is ordinary and find what can be extraordinary in it. So let's give each other a blessing once again. How lovely to see everyone here in person. We love you in stream too. Hope you're putting your arms around each other so we can give each other a blessing, so you can take it with you, share it with all the people whose lives you touch. And I get to see my friend Bill at the Gatesworth putting up with my dear father. That's another story. So thank you for your presence there. Bring blessings wherever you go.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May all that is good and high and holy keep you safe.
V'yadonai panav elecha v'yichunecha.
The upper worlds and the lower worlds get just a little bit closer. Feel the potential of that kiss to make this world a little bit more like that one with grace.
Yisar Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
And may all that is good and high and holy bring us a little peace by letting us be the best versions of godliness that we can possibly be.
Ken yehi ratzon.
And we say, Shabbat Shalom. That's good memories. Remember what happened to Jake? Everything laid and he was open to that. That was pretty good, right?